I remember back in high school, my friend showed me a video. It was a very short video that seemed to be filmed on a videotape. There was a woman in the foreground that was tied up and was clearly scared. Suddenly, someone came into the room that looked like a strange creature slowly walking up to the woman. I remember my friend telling me that this was actually a serial killer in America and that the video was real. And I believed him. It wasn't until many years later that I found out that this was from a film called the Poughkeepsie Tapes. This is a film that actually scared me as a teenager due to my friend and that one specific scene. For a long time I did not want to watch it, and then I finally did. And sadly, it is a bit disappointing. The Poughkeepsie Tapes was written by John and Drew Dowdle and directed by John Dowdle. Made to look like a pseudo-documentary horror type film, it took 15 days to shoot. The film jumps between interviews with different people and footage from the killer, who we get to know as the Water Street Butcher. Shot on a budget of $200,000, it did make a huge profit, as it made over $10 million. The brothers' main influence for the film was the classic horror movie Halloween, especially with the points of view for the killer. You can especially see this when the killer picks up the kitchen knife. Now before we continue, this is a spoiler warning, so if you want to watch the film, please go and watch it now. But I will say this, the review would not be going into a plot by plot basis, mainly because it is a documentary style film. But with that out of the way, let's look into the Poughkeepsie Tapes. As mentioned previously, the entire film is shot in a documentary style. We have multiple talking heads mixed in with footage from the killer. The outline of the film is as follows. After a police raid in an abandoned house in Poughkeepsie, New York, the police find hours and hours of videotape from a serial killer showing all of his work. We come to learn that the videos show the depravity of the killer, who we get to know as Ed. You see things such as killings, mutilations and decapitations. However, Ed always wears a mask, so even though there is so much evidence, they still don't know who he is. Generally with the Poughkeepsie Tapes, people always say that the footage from the killer are the most shocking parts, especially the scenes in the basement. But for me, I find that the more haunting parts of the film are the parts where you don't actually see the gore or the hardcore footage. For me, I found the footage of the killer talking to the children in the film as some of the worst parts. The first part being the girl who he actually abducts, and the second being the two Girl Scouts in his home. There is also footage of the killer talking to one of the victims' mum, and you see the mother's face as she realises that she's talking to him, and she's absolutely petrified. And to me, these are the parts that really stick. Via the use of the interviews, we come to learn that the killer is some sort of super smart serial killer, even to the point that Ted Bundy gets interviewed about him. We learn at the start that he seems to go for whoever he wants and doesn't really have a set type of victim. His first victim was an 8-year-old girl, and from there he attacks men and women, even going as far as decapitating someone and sewing the head into a woman's stomach and filming her reaction. I do find it a bit hard with the concept of the killer, mainly because it felt at parts that the killer was just too good. In a way, it felt like the killer was just not a human character, which I guess could be seen as a good thing, as to why would a human do such atrocious acts. But it always felt like the killer was 5 steps ahead of everyone, and it got to the point where it actually felt like it was getting absurd. I do like the use of the masks, especially the Plague Doctor. They do say in one of the interviews that the mask can essentially wash away any guilt from your actions. It also dehumanizes the killer, but also the main victim, Cheryl Dempsey. Cheryl's mask is a very uncanny valley type mask, again taking away any form of humanity that she has, especially when we see her in the end. As mentioned, we do have a main victim that we follow, Cheryl Dempsey. Cheryl was abducted as a teenager from her house, and the killer also killed and mutilated her boyfriend. We watch throughout the film as the killer physically and psychologically destroys Cheryl and turns her into his sex slave, and even his accomplice later in the film. Cheryl's character is probably the best part in the entire film, and I would say that this film shows one of the best depictions of Stockholm Syndrome I've ever seen in a film. The acting of Stacey Jabolski is brilliant. Of course, you do end up feeling the most emotion with Cheryl, mainly because you're with her for most of the film. As the kills start to pick up, the killer then changes his MO and focuses on prostitutes whilst posing as a police officer. From these kills, he is now known as the Water Street Butcher. The police investigation leads to a police officer named James Foley. Foley has no alibi and a history of hiring prostitutes. He also has matching sperm samples at the crime scenes. The police arrest James and he is sentenced to death in 1996. Throughout his time in prison, James is pleading his innocence and refuses any plea deals. On September the 9th, 2001, he is killed by lethal injection. However, James's former partner finds a map in his mailbox with the location of another body. James is then posthumously exonerated of the murders on September the 12th, but because of the proximity to the September the 11th attacks, this goes unrecognised by the public. The police then reverse engineer the map that was sent to James's former partner and they find the empty house. However, they are not alone. The police find a coffin with Cheryl still inside, alive. We also find out that she has been hurt that much that she now can't live without pain and was even torturing herself in hospital due to the killer's actions. The documentary team then decide to interview Cheryl, and as mentioned, you see this woman break in front of you. She can't even answer a question as she asks what she needs to say. We even find out that the killer has cut off her hand, which really shocked me when I first saw this. She talks about how she loves the killer and how the killer loved her and how he will come back to her so they can be together. 2 weeks after the interview, Cheryl takes her own life. After the burial, we learn that Cheryl's body has been exhumed and another tape has been left. The killer has come back for her. This entire section of the film is heartbreaking. The acting by Stacey Jaboski really shines through, as you can see the pain and sadness in her face. The additional touch of seeing her brush her hair and there's no hand really works in the film's favour. You know that this woman has lost all control. She has been broken down so much that she needs her master. We know that Cheryl will never live her normal life again. However, I think the entire film should have been focused on Cheryl. We don't really need the other parts. Cheryl's story is the most impactful. Also, the fact that the majority of the killer's tapes are on Cheryl, it just makes me wish that it was explored more. The film ends with the police saying that the killer will more than likely watch this in cinemas and they'll keep a watch on all the screenings that they can. As the credits roll, we see no actors' names, just the characters' names, and then in a post-credit scene, we see that the killer has another victim. He says that if she doesn't blink, she will survive. As soon as she blinks, the camera cuts off. Overall, the film is not that great. I found that it can be very boring in parts and can also take you out of the moment. During the killer's footage, we have background music playing, which can be very distracting. I feel it would be more effective if there was no music and just audio from the camera. The camera also has this really harsh grain and wavy after effect on, which can be really irritating. The acting is a mixed bag. Some of the actors that they have for the talking heads are decent, but some are really bad, to the point of laughable. As mentioned, the best actor in the film is Stacey Jaboski. It also feels like the film doesn't really go anywhere. We have these jarring loud static sounds to the footage, and then we cut back to the interviews, but not much is actually going on. It did struggle to keep my attention due to this. I will say that the film does feel like a documentary. Not a good documentary, but a documentary nonetheless. However, I do feel like Lake Mungo did it better, which came out a year later. It is interesting to see that the killer is essentially a showman. He uses characters and costumes throughout the film. In a way, he could be seen as the ultimate narcissist, and that his videos are his major performance. He is the leading man in his tapes. He always needs that sense of control, even when he gets away with murder. It could be seen that he is not happy that Foley's exoneration got moved to page 6 on the newspaper, so he carried on killing. The main issue that I have with the killer is the fact that he does seem very overpowered. I know in a previous review I spoke about Mr. Reed in Heretic and how much control he has and how much he plans things, but in a way it feels like the killer in the Poughkeepsie Tapes takes the idea of control to the complete extreme, which takes you out of the immersion of the movie. It feels like the police should have gotten to the killer much sooner, but instead in the film they talk about how he got away with it for so long and how they had no evidence and how bad he was. I guess in a way it could be seen like the real life killer Dennis Rader, aka BTK, who would torture and kill women. He would then taunt the police until he got arrested in 2005. It can be said that the killer in the Poughkeepsie Tapes is a sadist and his sadism has expanded. For me, it's always been about control. I think he falls more into a narcissist as he makes Cheryl call him master and of course has the tapes of his own work and always needs to be in the spotlight. In conclusion, would I recommend the Poughkeepsie Tapes? Not really. Mainly because the film can be boring and it struggles to keep a good pace. The acting is very mixed and sometimes the documentary side can be very jarring. If I were to recommend the film, it would be Lake Mungo. However, if you are interested in the movie, then go for it. It is an experience, that is for sure. However, just like Megan is Missing, I feel like the Poughkeepsie Tapes has gained its reputation via word of mouth. Even MGM didn't want the makers of the film to do interviews and say it's fake. Again, trying to keep the real vibes. Compared to the other found footage / documentary type movies we've watched, I would say that the McPherson tape is a better movie. It felt the most real compared to the other films we've reviewed. But of course, that is my opinion, and I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments down below. Anyway, this has been my review of the Poughkeepsie Tapes. Make sure to take care, stay safe, and make sure you don't get into a car with someone with a video camera. See you next time. Hey everyone, thank you very much for watching my review of the Poughkeepsie Tapes. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell and turn on all notifications. And also comment down below your opinion on the film. I'd love to hear your opinions. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you stay safe. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.